Shrimad, the Divine Grace of Bhāgavatam, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantharaj, Shrimad Bhāgavatam Ki, Gaur Premanandi, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru. He would click off the mic, or you could press it on and press it off. So you can hear the transcriber click if you have the original tapes. Try it now. Try it now, Monica. See if it works.
This needs to be charged.
That one doesn't get charged. Now it's worked. She said it's on. This one was off. Okay, and now this one is on. I can see the connection. Okay, so the way it works, so that Prabhupada would click the tape on, he would speak, and then he would click it off. So you can hear this click, click, click on the transcriber if you listen to the tape. So these are the tapes. So by the end of December, the tapes have begun arriving at Boston Temple. Plastic reels. Grundig dictation tapes. That's a Grundig. Wrapped in a simple business envelope, stapled and addressed in Swamiji's own hand. First they had come at the rate of 1 a week, then more quickly, 2 or 3 a week. Shrimad had set aside the early morning hours for typing before going to work, even before the others had risen from bed. He would sit on the kitchen floor, listening to Prabhupada's voice through earphones and typing. And so the transcription has a similar unit. You have to have 2 because they're not compatible with any other unit. And then the transcription has a pedal that he can step on to advance the tape or fast forward it. So while you're listening in the headphones, this way you're typing and your foot is manipulating it on and off of the dictaphone of the player. This is completely, like I said, imagine how without any other, now you can just speak into anything, transcribe. It'll even transcribe it for you nowadays. But it was such a lengthy, tedious process. Prabhupada had to speak, it had to be mailed, there was no Zoom, there was no WhatsApp, there was nothing. But somehow all these books were manifest through this tedious process that Prabhupada would sit down every single day for hours and transcribe these books. This is better than getting a letter, he would think. It was Swamiji himself teaching the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Shrimad became so attached to his service that his whole existence began to revolve around it. He would feel a pang of love for every U.S. mailman he saw in the city, because it was the mailman who delivered Swamiji's tapes. Although Shrimad considered himself expert in hearing Swamiji's voice, on one tape there was one word he couldn't understand. Prabhupada was describing the demon Hiranyakashi's birth from Diti, and to Shrimad it sounded like, by the pores of the pregnancy of Diti, the whole universe went dark. And Shrimad was thinking, how could Diti's pregnancy have pores? Prabhupada wrote back that it was force, not pores. You had to become expert in hearing Prabhupada's accent. In these early tapes, now some people couldn't understand it, his English. But those who made the attempt were usually successful. You had to make the attempt. If you just dismissed it that, I can't understand this, he's speaking in a language, it's such a heavy accent, who can understand? But no, it was very easy to understand once you tuned your ear. It just took time. You had to, like anything else, it takes practice. And then, anyway, it wasn't difficult. And so again, I encourage everyone to begin at some point to listen to these tapes from the very start in 1966, even before. There's tapes from when Prabhupada was transcribing when he was still on 72nd Street, which is where they stole the tape recorder, by the way, the first one, not the Grundig. So, by the force of Diti's pregnancy. The best thing will be as soon as you typewrite the tapes, send me 1 copy after editing. I will keep 1 copy with me. You will keep 1 copy with you. Sometimes while riding on the bus to work, Shrimad would fall asleep and dream of hearing Swamiji's voice in his ears and himself rapidly typing. It was a very personal service. Prabhupada had 9 tapes and wanted to keep track of how many were with Shrimad and how many were on their way back to him. Let's see, going back and forth. I have sent one tape this morning, Prabhupada wrote. Probably you are getting it tomorrow. So far, I received your edited copy of Shrimad Bhāgavatam, and it is nicely done. Since the arrival of winter snow and ice in Boston, not many people had been coming by the storefront in the evenings, and the devotees were content to stay indoors, working at their respective tasks. Each of them was satisfied that his engagement was perfect. Prabhupada had fixed the date of his arrival in Boston for May 1st, and he asked Satsrup to begin arranging lectures for him in Boston's many universities. When the devotee sent Prabhupada a few photographs of the storefront interior, he wrote back, "It gives me a nice idea." Although the photos showed only a small empty room with an unfinished altar, Prabhupada had not been looking with the eyes of an interior decorator. Rather, his nice idea was that his disciples in Boston were engaging in Krishna consciousness to the best of their ability. The important thing was that they were serving Krishna. By adding Krishna consciousness, anything material could become valuable. When Pradyumna had to enter the hospital for a hernia operation, Satsrup didn't know how they would pay for it. Pradyumna's parents had refused. Having no one else to turn to, Satsrup wrote Prabhupada, asking him if he could pay the bill. Just as a dependent child, fearful of the world, turns always to his protective parents, Satsrup had faith that Swamiji knew everything and could decide everything. And besides, no one else cared about Pradyumna or how the Boston Center for Krishna Consciousness would pay a $500 hospital bill. Satsrup concluded that if Swamiji thought it wrong for him to ask for the money, then he would tell him that also. Srila Prabhupada considered the hospital bill a botheration. Why should he have to worry about every item of business in 10 different centers around the world? 10 centers. Although he assured Satsrup that if necessary he would send the money for Pradyumna's bill, he suggested that his disciples form a governing board to manage such problems. His growing institution had to be properly managed and not entirely by him. He should be left to carry on the duties proper for the spiritual master. Not that he should have to be simultaneously treasurer, chairman, troubleshooter, and counselor for each problem of each devotee in each center. And yet, that was happening. As he accepted more disciples, they were turning to him for everything: medical advice, marriage counseling, financial assistance, as well as transcendental knowledge. Prabhupada said it gave him a headache. After Pradyumna's successful surgery, Prabhupada wrote congratulating him. "I shall be glad to know how you are making progress, and I am anxious that you are still feeling pains. I'm glad to know that proper care is being taken and you are not going up any stairs." That is very nice. As the time grew nearer for Prabhupada's arrival, Satsrup, Pradyumna, and Jadharani arranged for his living accommodations. When they wrote to Prabhupada in New York, candidly telling him what they had and asking if it was good enough, he replied that he didn't mind walking the 9 blocks from the storefront to the house as long as there were no hills. And he didn't mind how many devotees stayed with him at the apartment, but he must have a separate, silent place. As for college lecture engagements, he said, whether they were big or small, he was always prepared to serve. "Probably you are making fine arrangements," he wrote. "Many will come to the temple to hear me. So in that case, I must come." Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Shrimad Bhāgavatam, 4th canto, 3rd chapter, texts 3 and 4. So somebody will be able to advance that when we get to the 2nd verse. Doesn't have to. Now I'll read the first verse. We'll chant the second verse. Ishtva savajapayena brahmisthana vibhayacha brahmisthana vibhuyacha Brahaspati Sabang Nama Samare Be Kututamam Daksha, I'm just going to read the translation in purport because there's two shlokas and two purports, which is unusual, but Daksha began a sacrifice named Vajrapeya, and he became excessively confident of his support by Lord Brahma. He then performed another great sacrifice named Brahaspati Sava, purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the Vedas, it is prescribed that before performing a Brahaspati Sava sacrifice, one should perform the sacrifice named Vajrapaya. Sri Sri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. While performing these sacrifices, however, Daksha neglected great devotees like Lord Shiva. According to Vedic scriptures, the demigods are eligible to participate in yajnas and share the oblations, but Daksha wanted to avoid them. All sacrifices are intended to pacify Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu includes all his devotees. Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the other demigods are all obedient servants of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Lord Vishnu is never satisfied without them. But Daksha, being puffed up with his power, wanted to deprive Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva of participation in the sacrifice. Understanding that if one satisfies Vishnu, it is not necessary to satisfy his followers. But that is not the process. Vishnu wants his followers to be satisfied first. Lord Krishna says, Mad Bhakta Puja Bhayadika. The worship of my devotees is better than worship of me. Similarly, in the Shiva Purana, it is stated that the best mode of worship is to offer oblations to Vishnu. But better than that is to worship the devotees of Krishna. Thus, Daksha's determination to neglect Lord Shiva in the sacrifices was not fitting. So we can see how easily misunderstandings can arise. Because we saw that, we have the analogy that if one waters the root of a tree, all the leaves and branches are nourished. Therefore, there's no necessity to worship various individual demigods, etc., etc. But here, we understand that the demigods are not just ordinary living entities. And these servants of Lord Vishnu are not in any way, shape, or form, to be compared to, other us, so to speak. And so it's clear that Vishnu personally would take offense in this case if his devotees are neglected. And so that, I said, how many people are reading this Bhāgavatam without purports? And do they understand the subtle nuances that are being detailed? And many of them are thinking, no, we don't have to, we can just worship Lord Vishnu. And many are doing like that. And this is not, technically this is considered to be a neophyte position. That one worships the deity in the temple, but he neglects to honor the devotees. And so we don't want to unnecessarily belabor the point, but it should be clear that we don't disrespect the demigods. We don't misunderstand their position, but we understand in context. And Prabhupada gives that definition of intelligence. Everyone knows that, right? Analyze things in their proper perspective. That's in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and the purport to verses 4 and 5. Intelligence means to analyze things in their proper perspective. So this is what we're getting here in the Bhagavatam. We're getting perspective. Bhaktivedanta purports give us something that we could not get in many hundreds, if not millions of births. You know, how many years the Bhagavatam has been in print, or since the advent of Kali Yuga. And yet somehow or other, it didn't produce the exact results to bring people closer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the matter that Kali Yuga specifically was meant to advent. All right? Kalaya doshanidhi rajanasti eka mahaguna kirtana deva krishnasya. Even though everything is there, they were not getting this, the essence. So somehow or other, we're very fortunate. And we'll continue to text 4. And this will chant and we'll repeat. Tasmin Brahmarshaya Sarve, Tasmin Brahmarshaya, Devarshi Pitri Devataha, Devarshi Pitri Devataha, Asankrita Swasyayanas, Asankrita Swasyayanas, Tatpatnyasya Brahmrit Bhartrikaha, Tatpatnyasya Bhartrikaha, Tatpatnyasya Bhartrikaha. Some of these are a little difficult, no? You have the Bhartrikaha. You have to, there's underneath, when there's an anuswar or a visarga, under the letter R, or above the M or any other, that indicates that it's a compound vowel, so it's Re, not R, it's Re. Bhartrikaha. Please chant. Tasmin Brahmarshaya Sarve, Devarshi Pitri Devataha, Asankrita Swasya Yanas, Tatpatnya Chasabhatrikaha, Tasmin Brahmarshaya Sarve, Devarshi Pitri Devataha, Asankrita Swasyayanas, Tatpatnya Chasabhatrikaha, Tasmin Brahmarshaya Sarve, Devashi Pitri Devataha, Asankrita Swasyayanas, Tatpatnya Sabatikaha, Tasmin Brahmarshaya Sarve, Devashi Pitri Devataha, Akasankrita Swasyayanas, Tatpatnya Sabatikaha. Very nice. Others? Tasmin Brahmarshaya Sarve, Devashi Pitri Devataha, Asankrita Swasyayanas, Tatpatnya Sabatikaha, Tasmin Brahmarshaya Sarve, Devashi Pitri Devataha, Asankrita Swasyayanas, Tatpatnya Sabatikaha. Ladies, can you see it from there? No. That's okay if you don't. Those men in that sacrifice, Brahmarishaya, the Brahmarshis, Sarve, all, Devashi, the Deva Rishis, Pitri, ancestors, Devataha, demigods, Asan, were, Kritaswastiyanaha, were very nicely decorated with ornaments. Tatpatnya, their wives, Cha, and Sabatrikaha, along with their husbands. Translation and purport by Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. While the sacrifice is being performed, many Brahmarshis, great sages, ancestral demigods, and other demigods, their wives all very nicely decorated with ornaments, attended from different parts of the universe. Please repeat. While the sacrifice is being performed, many Brahmarshis, great sages, ancestral demigods, and other demigods, their wives are very nicely decorated with ornaments, attended from different parts of the universe. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In any auspicious ceremony, such as a marriage ceremony, sacrificial ceremony, or puja ceremony, it is auspicious for married women to decorate themselves very nicely with ornaments, fine clothing, and cosmetics. These are auspicious signs. Many heavenly women assembled with their husbands, the Devarshis, demigods, and Rajarshis, in that great sacrifice named Brahaspati Sabha. It is specifically mentioned in this verse that they approached with their husbands. But when a woman is decorated nicely, her husband becomes more cheerful. The nice decorations, ornaments, and dress of the wives of the demigods and sages, and the cheerfulness of the demigods and sages themselves were all auspicious signs for the ceremony. Om Gyanatmandasya Garanjana Slakaya Chakshuram Vatamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Pachalam Pangum Vankayate Gurum Yat Kripatabham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatanam. So it seems very straightforward. Where's the philosophy in this shloka and purport? What does it say? That we're not these bodies? Or that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Or seems to be a cultural passage, giving some background into of course, the Vedic tradition. Their sacrifices, they know they don't go to the 7-Eleven to get something and buy some paraphernalia and get some drinks and get some kana. No. Everything is done according to scriptural reference. And they understand that in order to, just like we understand that in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that what comes, everything comes by sacrifice. Yada snosi, not by just, like I said, going to a store. Yad karoshi, yad snasi, yad jahoshi, dadasi yad. Everything has to be there, whatever you do, or whatever sacrifices you perform. So what sacrifices is anyone performing nowadays? What's that? Which one? They're sacrificing their lifeblood in exchange for some temporary return. This is the highest interest rate, right? One has a short lifespan, and we see that now everything is complicated. There's no real wealth. Everything is by some trick where you're enslaved by a system, where you work hard and in exchange, you get some paper. There's no real value in this. It's called fiat currency. Somebody else really controls it. They can instantly devalue it to nil. And then even if you've worked for 100 years and you have $100 million in a bank, it can become worthless in a second. So where is the value? So in this way, you have to conform. This is how you are controlled in Kali Yuga. Everyone is controlled. The only persons who are free are those who have real wealth. What is real wealth? Land, cows, right? This is real wealth. It doesn't, nothing, not affected by inflation. If it's properly done, it can't be taken away. Property rights are the most ancient aspect of any civilization. The ability to control one's destiny lies in these things. So that's why we see that the Vedic culture was perfect, because it gave the proper prescription in Varnashram. So this is the philosophy that we're seeing here. This is actually Varnashram. But it's taken in this sense, it may not appear to be a complete picture of Varnashram. But yet there are little understandings here. We see that a woman, Prabhupada said this, a woman in the absence of her husband does not dress nicely. When the husband is out, sometimes, they have to go on some traveling. They have to go out of station. The wife does not usually go out of the house, and she does not spend a lot of time preparing herself to look nice, because her only business is to please her husband. So in the presence of the husband, she dresses very attractively. So this is, everyone knows that, yes, this woman married to this man is very attentive, and she takes care to make sure that she is in an attractive condition for his pleasure, not for anyone else's pleasure. But it's demonstrated in a social setting. So the women are all coming to the sacrifice, like now people will go to a concert or a ballroom dance, or something like that. So this is and when you go to these mundane things, what are the benefits did you get? You pay some money, is there any benefit? Momentary pleasure. When you go to the sacrifice, you partake in the sacrifice, you get a share of the sacrifice. Everyone present gets a certain percentage of the, it's not profit sharing, so what do you call it? Punya sharing. You get punya sharing. Punya means pious activities. There's punya and then there's pap. Pap means sinful activity. So everyone who's attending the sacrifice is getting some share of the good result. Of course, as we progress, we'll see that this particular sacrifice is not an ordinary sacrifice, because there are so many complications, so many things being done improperly. And so we see here what happens in the previous shloka. He's not satisfying the demigods. He's trying to circumvent his obligation. Unless you're a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly in the chain of the disciplic succession, you have an obligation put to the ancestors. And that's also described in the Bhagavad Gita. One has to satisfy the ancestors and all the demigods. At the time of his birth, he's a debtor, just like here nowadays. Everyone is a debtor. Very few people are free from debt. And they don't understand what is the real debt. The real debt is, I've taken birth. I immediately owe, for my presence now, my whole line of forefathers. Because without them, I would not be here. Of course, now there's no Garbhadan. The Sanskar was not done nicely necessarily. And all these ritualistic ceremonies, which are, how many in number? 10 in number. The samskars. First samskar is Garbhadan, before birth. In order to get a good child, one has to, Prabhupada set this system up. Can you just imagine Prabhupada telling his disciples at that time? You have to chant 50 rounds. 50 rounds before engaging in intercourse with your lawfully wedded wife, if you want to beget a good child. And so this Prabhupada was giving a perfect instruction. This is but it's absolutely required. If you cannot fulfill this, then you have no recourse. You can't go to the complaint department and say, I got this demon kid. He's not what I expected. I want a refund. No. I want a do-over. No. Garbhadan Samskar, you do your best. What happens, happens. That's a different story. Everyone comes with their own karma. But as for the parents, it is our responsibility to try to fulfill the requirements, that we're adopting as Vedic culture. So whether we know it or not, Prabhupada has brought us into this ancient system of Varnashram. A little bit below, just like we have Brahmachari, we have Grihastha, we have Vanaprastha, we have Sannyasa, so these things are there. It's not just for show that someone is putting on saffron or someone is, accepting the sacred order of sannyas. No. It has a purpose. Everything has a purpose. In some places, sometimes it is for show. Many people, they dress in a certain way just to accomplish some, to make an impression on foolish people to steal their money and cheat. That's why there's that saying, cheaters and the cheated. That's why in the beginning of the Bhāgavatam it said, Dharma projita kaitavo cha paramo nimacharanam satam. It's supposed to eliminate, wipe out this cheating religion, because it even understood that people will pretend. Look at Ravana. What did he do? He didn't dress up as a demon and go he was already a demon to go and kidnap Sita. He dressed up as a renunciant because people drop their guard. They think, oh, this person is a sadhu. I should offer all respect. I should give him. You haven't read Ramayana yet. Anyway, there's a passageway. In the forest, they had established a hermitage, and Ram, Lakshman, and Sita. And they're living in exile. There seems to be a common theme. Ram, the Pandavas, so they're living in exile because that was Dāsa had given a vow, a promise to one of his wives that he would grant her any boon she requested. And she called in that chit. So that's another thing. One should never be a debtor. So what a debt. She came to him at the time after being influenced by one of her corrupted servants and said, okay, I want my son to sit on the throne, not your son. And of course, the king was devastated, but according to the Varnashram, according to the Vedic system, he had no choice. Of course, this is all Leela, so he had to banish his son. Anyway, so then they end up in the forest, and, technically, Sita should not have gone with him, but as a chaste wife, she said, I cannot be separated from my husband, otherwise I will die. So they all went together, and then Ravan took advantage of the situation. He had some demon friends, this Marichi, and he was this is where they get the stories in science fiction about shapeshifters. Everyone heard of shapeshifters? Okay, nowadays it's kind of, people. He was a shapeshifter. He could assume any form. So Ravana said, look, you go to the hermitage, or you go close by, and you look like a golden fawn, very unique animal. It doesn't exist, actually. And Ram and Lakshman are, they're Kshatriyas. And when Sita saw this, she said, I'd like you to capture that for me. I desire this. There's another cautionary tale that women have certain desires, and the man has certain, he feels obliged to satisfy them. So you should always be a little cautious. But, Ram wanted to satisfy Sita, so he said, all right, I will go. Lakshman, you stay here, protect Sita. I will go catch this deer. But as he went into the forest to catch the deer stopped and began to imitate Ram's voice and shouted out, Lakshman, Sita, help me, help me. And so this is another thing. People have AI now, and you can imitate anyone's voice. And so he was imitating this voice, and then Sita's going, Lakshman, don't you hear? Ram is in trouble. You must go to his assistance. Lakshman saying, no, Ram told me to stay here. That is my duty. And so then unfortunately, she used her womanly ways to make him feel that so diminished in his manhood. She said, I think you want Ram to die so that you can have me to yourself. Can you imagine someone saying like that? This is such a... So then, of course, he felt that I have to go. So he left. And then as soon as he came, to Ram, Ram said, well, Lakshman, why have you left? But then he could understand, yes, because it was Sita sent me. She said I had to come. So then Ram, of course, killed the demon. And they rushed back to their hermitage. But in that absence of time, because the deer had taken him very far away, Ravana appeared dressed disguised as this saintly person. And even though Lakshman had put around a circle of protection and that he could not enter, he convinced her to step outside the circle. Because she's a sadhu. He said, oh, I cannot cross this. But he's begging alms, you must satisfy me. Because if you do not satisfy the sadhu, what do they say? All of your family, for generations, they will be ruined. And so in this way, she was tricked by someone pretending to be a sadhu. The lesson is, don't be tricked. A sadhu is not seen by one's eyes or understood by one's eyes. He's understood by hearing. And so that's the test. Anybody could appear and dress like this and present some false philosophy just to get some cheap followers. One has to listen very carefully. How does that person walk? How does he talk? How does he sit? How does he speak? This is how we're trying to understand things from ABC in Bhagavad Gita. One should not artificially jump ahead until it's thoroughly understood. Why is Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita as it is? Why does he... we have certain things like higher Gopi Gita, the Uddhava Gita. And people sometimes they want to do all these things. That's nice. It's very pleasing to the mind, right? But if one has not actually made 100% commitment, if he cannot say that I am fully surrendered, even in the Ramayana, what is that saying? It says, from this day forward, I fully surrender unto you. A very simple prayer. But if there's any hesitation, then one should not think that I should just simply try to understand things on a superficial, scholarly level, just to impress people. I may know so many shlokas, I may know so many things, but if I am not 100% dedicated to the mission of the spiritual master, then everything else is insignificant, secondary, for show. So he should not try to fool himself or try to fool others. He should be honest. I need to pay more attention to chanting my rounds. I need to pay more attention to the details of my service. I need to pay more attention to giving respect to the seniors and protection to the juniors. Everyone has a duty. Juniors have a duty, seniors have a duty. Look at Prabhupada, he's taking this headache. He said he wanted the GBC to handle this, and GBC is not just simply that substitute for Prabhupada. They also have their duties, and how are they distributing their duties? To make sure that all the temples in their jurisdiction are running properly. So they have the temple presidents, and then the temple presidents have their assistants in various capacities. So everything is running according to the plan of Srila Prabhupada. Even in this infancy, where there were only 10 centers, Prabhupada already knew that this was going to increase, and a system had to be developed in order for him to complete his mission, which was to translate these books. And we see how dedicated, how to the extent that Srila Prabhupada was dedicated in his mission, to that extent we should be equally, if not greater, in our dedication and determination to read these books and distribute these books, to make sure that they're everywhere. How Prabhupada sacrificed. If we can appreciate just this one little aspect, we're not caught up in the day-to-day routines. Yes, we have our duties and this and that, the other thing. But our overriding sense of duty and gratitude to the spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada in particular, is to make sure that this Prabhupada's books and this timeless philosophy is distributed far and wide. Because that is how we, Prabhupada said, if you want to please me, distribute my books. As many times. You want to please me, distribute my books. Of course, he also said, how can you distribute my books if you are not reading my books? So one has to read or one has to hear. Hearing is the same as reading. Sometimes, if I'm at my services, I'm on the altar or I'm here, I can put in my earbuds and I can listen to Prabhupada's lectures. And this way I'm doing the original multitasking. In the old days, we used to wash the pots. We used to have a cassette recorder hooked up to a huge amplifier head. And we just blast out, the din of the clanking pots was no match for Prabhupada's booming oratory. The message of Godhead was coming clear through our dull brains while we were cleaning our hearts, washing those pots. So this will always be the method. It will never change. One has to hear. And how he arranges his daily activities in such a way to maximize that is the measure of how much and how quickly he will advance in spiritual life. Because he's always thinking, how can I hear more? Some people say, no, I just want to read. Okay, well, what about hearing? Because hearing doesn't require you to sit down. Hearing requires you to just simply turn on the source of the reception and have the earbuds in. And I could be straightening out the book room. I could be washing the pots. I could be arranging the paraphernalia in the pujaari room. I could be cleaning the temple. I could be cleaning my room. I could be doing anything. There's no excuse not to be hearing. But one has to have that determination. Everyone has the facility. Everyone has a smartphone. And when you're not using it, it's a dumb phone. Right? Just a paperweight. Take it out, put it on the table if you're not using it. But it's your transcendental source of the Vedas. You tune it in, you plug in your earbuds, and you're immediately in Prabhupada's lecture. You're immediately getting the nectar, the bliss, the direct connection to the pure devotee, the Acharya. It's not an ordinary thing. One has to realize what the difference is between this movement and other movements. Right? Very difficult. It's very subtle. Very subtle. But the Acharya he is not an ordinary. Even we saw from Prabhupada's Vyas Puja offering in 1936. It says where he's giving that very intense, how can you say, definition that everything that one cannot neglect. Our whole spiritual life is based on this dedication and determination. It's not based on your academics, not based on passing this exams or a Bhakti Shastri or Bhakti Vaibhav. These things are all secondary. Anybody, I could distribute these books to a student in the street and say, study these books and take this test. Where in those books? How many essays? How many essays in Bhakti Shastri? One in Bhakti Shastri, and then in Bhakti Vaibhav, and more. One essay to test your realization. Otherwise, it's just question and answer. You have to remember the shloka. So memory is not realization. Like I said, so many people are memorizing so many things. You're all students. You're all BA, MA, PhD. Right? But what's that? Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayat Yasya Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahoitakam. But by following the process, by understanding who I am, this Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan, these three basic principles very heavily emphasized by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. To understand who am I, what is my relationship with God, and what is the goal of that relationship. This who am I and who is God, the difference between the middle of this Abhideya portion is how to act within the relationship. Just like when you first meet your proposed fiancé, because in India everything is arranged marriage. So everyone knows that I will get married someday. So the parents are making an arrangement, and you'll meet the first person for the first time, but you don't know this person. And so there's an arrangement to associate. And that association is the Abhideya. You get to understand what is this relationship, how to interact, like that. And eventually there's marriage, and that marriage is the Prayojan stage. That we have established our relationship, we have learned how to conduct ourselves within that relationship, and then there is the fruit of that relationship. And that ultimate fruit is that prema prayojan. So these things have parallels, and we should appreciate where I am in this bhakti yoga process. What do I need to do? But guaranteed that the more you listen to Prabhupada's lectures, all of your doubts, all of your confusion, the crystallization of whatever you have heard and whatever you have read, and the fact is, the more, it's like if you mine in a gold mine a certain amount of ore, and you bring it in, and you, what they call smelting process, you separate the ore from the slag, and you get a certain amount of gold. So the larger the quantity that you have mined, the greater the quantity of the gold that will result in that process. So if you think I will only do a certain amount of service and expect, the same realization as the person who's doing more service and more hearing, no, it's unreasonable to expect that. You will not get it, right? So you have to endeavor to this. To those who are constantly devoted to worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which I give them the Krishna is giving it. I'm not achieving this by my scholarship. Krishna is giving it. So if we have just this one point, if we simply apply this in all of our activities, then we'll get the desired result. This is guaranteed. We have seen. Look at all these elevated devotees who are now acting in capacity as on Prabhupada's behalf in initiating spiritual masters. How did they come to that position? Through sincerity, dedication, determination. And Prabhupada, of course, first thing is sincerity. First thing. Because if one is not sincere, then everything else seems to be ritualistic. He doesn't understand. Why am I doing this? But when one is sincere, again, Krishna is giving. He is the knowledge, that shining lamp of knowledge. It is within us, but it is covered at this point. Cheta Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavadi Nirvapanam. We're saying this every single day or several days a week in order to appreciate what is the purport, why is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stressing this. First shloka of 8. And how is it that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most erudite scholar, Nimai Pandit, how did he only want to give 8 shlokas? Everybody knows the definition of sutra. What is a sutra? What does it mean, sutra? Yes, it is a, yes, condensed meaning. It's like when you cook down milk, and how does Matanga know this? Because he's cooking down milk all the time. When you boil something, you remove the water, you condense the essence. So a sutra is information concentration. Just like code. You have Morse code. It doesn't look like anything, it's just dots and dashes. All right? But you can put a lot of information if you know the science. If you're a Boy Scout, you got your merit badge in Morse code. Okay? You know things that no one else can know. You can transmit information that no one else can understand. So everything that we're getting can be expanded. All this knowledge is all concentrated. But the Acharya is the one who has that specific qualification, how to expand this knowledge. So that's why you have the Bhaktivedanta purports. Others are reading, and that's it. They're reading it. They're giving a little purport based on their limited knowledge. But they don't have the realization because it has not been from within their heart expanded. And Lord Chaitanya gave these 8 concentrated information, sutras, for our benefit. Everything is there. So we have to take it very seriously. Every aspect must be given the proper attention. So even the simple act of just rising early in the morning, it requires some endeavor. One has to shake off the modes of nature. And he has to, when you think, the Prabhupada always told us, when immediately upon rising, you chant the name of your Ishta Devata. Immediately upon rising. Because you have to require, just like on your phone, when you're looking for directions, you have your GPS. Sometimes you might scroll here or there, but there's a little button on the side that's to reorient. Brings you back to exactly where you are. So sometimes they call it recenter or reorient, but it's the same meaning. And so by chanting the name of the deity in the morning, you immediately bring yourself, your consciousness, back to a transcendental awareness. Right? Because the modes of nature, they completely cover you over in sleep. That's what sleep is. Sleep is a mode of ignorance, nothing less. Which is why we try to minimize sleep, not maximize it. We're trying to minimize the mode of ignorance in our lives. So we should, if anything we take from here, we understand that there's ritualistic performances, ritualistic observances. These are cultural appreciations. Everything is there. And we should take what we need in order to execute our service, to function in this society of those who are similarly familiar. Sometimes we're asked to go to certain functions. Maybe we go to a wedding, we have to know how to act properly in order to preach. Not artificially, not that it is our sole purpose. If we just present ourselves as devotees, we have fulfilled 99% of our service. That they see who we are and who we represent, and what happens? They immediately see, upon seeing the devotee, they say Hare Krishna. Doesn't matter where you are. If they see the tilak, they say, oh, you're Hare Krishna. They see your Kunti Mala and they say, oh, you're Hare Krishna. Many people know. People that you wouldn't expect, they know. And so, you're Hare Krishna. So we have done our daily duty just by being out there in the street and reminding everyone about Krishna. So not only do they see us and remember, they also hear the holy name. And then if they're really fortunate, they get a book. And then everything is changed. Sangsara Davanala Lila Loka. Their cycle of birth and death has been interrupted at that point. We have literally interrupted their cycle of birth and death. How important that service is. Literally saving the living entity from this horror of degradation, where who knows next life what he'll be. Right? Prabhupada used to tell us in Vrindavan that, hogs, dogs, monkeys, camels, asses, they're all in Vrindavan. They're in Vrindavan. So what is their devotees? What is that? How does one? Prabhupada said, these monkeys were formerly false renunciants. False renunciants. And they took birth as monkeys in Vrindavan. And they create lots of havoc and mischief. So what to speak, of all these other living entities in Vrindavan. But what is that benefit? And this is their last birth. This is their last birth, because they cannot commit any sin. It is an automatic. They take birth, their next birth is Vaikuntha. There's a guaranteed. Unless they get removed from Vrindavan. Prabhupada told that story also. About how the monkeys in Vrindavan are sometimes captured and sent for experiments to different countries, even in America. Many monkeys were imported from India. And maybe they were born in Vrindavan, but they died in America, so they lose the benefit of taking birth in Vrindavan. They lose that benefit. They die outside. Very unfortunate situation. But that's also some type of karma. How to understand it? Very difficult. We don't want to speculate. But the fact is it happens. And especially Prabhupada mentioned it, that it happens. So we're also fortunate. We're in the Vaikuntha, in the temple. So we should protect that status very carefully. Not that somehow or other we end up outside in a situation where there's no guarantee. We have to, here there's guarantee. One is performing service here, one is doing service here, he's connected here. My godbrother was telling me how that his brother was on traveling Sankirtan, and I mentioned this last time, they were in a van and they kept the heater on and 3 of them died. Only 1 survived. But their destination was guaranteed, because they were performing the highest service to the spiritual master, book distribution. So it doesn't matter if they were alive or dead. Just by being in that situation, they were saved. They were delivered. So Krishna took them back. He makes arrangements. It seemed horrible to us, to lose devotees in that way. But they were performing the higher service, just like dying on the battlefield. They got more than just cheap recognition with some medal and a few words. They achieved the highest goal of life. Tyaktva deyam puna jama nayati mamiti sojana. So we should understand these things and probably recognize that. So this is the whole point. He immediately understood how that these persons have gone back to Godhead. So we can take it to the bank that if we just stick strictly to the philosophy and practice according to our capacity, that Krishna will ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paripari. What's that next part? Tesham nitya prayuktanam. What? Yoga kshema bahamyaham. Thank you. Yoga kshema bahamyaham. Krishna will preserve what you have and carry what you lack. But I like that. You don't have to worry. Ananyas chintayanto mam. You don't have to worry. That word chinta, just like the Brijbasis, what do they say? Chinta mat karo. This is their most famous saying. If you go to Vrindavan, this is what you hear the most. Especially if you're trying to manage them. They don't want you to
I said, Chinta mat karo, kuch raho. You should be happy. Don't worry, be happy. They invented that saying. It didn't come from a kid's movie, or from the Rastas, or from Bob Marley. It came from the Brajabasis. Don't worry, be happy. So we should understand that. And of course, they have nothing to worry about. At the end of their life, they're going back home, back to God. So they have nothing, literally, they have nothing to worry about. And they're living such a simple life. We have to remember that this is not an ordinary place. Sometimes we can also become covered over in the Dham and commit Dham aparad. And Dham aparad is not just to the Dham, but also to the Dham Vasis. So one should always be very humble, not interact on too familiar a platform. It can become very dangerous. Any questions about how we can dedicate ourselves? That means from this point on, everyone will go and approach the temple commander and say, I have so much time, and I want to fully surrender to you, and whatever you want me to do, like carry all these things into Krishna Hall, it will be done. Your word is my command. Okay? So that is surrender. One should never think that I have some extra time. My extra time belongs to Krishna. And if I'm not using it in his service, it's actually getting a negative balance. Negative balance. So there's only two things: the service to Krishna and not this idle service, idle time. Someone says, Prabhu, this is my time. Sunday's my day off. This is a recent concoction. It never existed. There's no such thing. But nowadays, people say, oh, no, Prabhu, I have to. You have a few things that you have to. We even used to do your laundry. Because nowadays, people say, oh, Prabhu, I have to do my laundry. But in the old days in the ashram, we did all the laundry, only the two of us, 100 brahmacharis. We did all their laundry. So that everybody could concentrate on hearing, chanting, and Sankirtan. Didn't have to. Can you just imagine 100 people trying to use two machines in the basement of the Henry Street Temple? No, it would never work. You know how it is up here. The best thing is you assign somebody, they do all the laundry. And everybody else has so much extra time, they don't have to think about it. Right, Bhakti? Dylan? You have to say it a little louder, Dylan.
When you're hearing, so like you're listening like to a Bhāgavatam lecture, you say, don't have to like sit down or anything like that. You don't have to read it. You have a smartphone for a reason. But I find that sometimes when listening to such things, my mind cannot entirely methodically understand, right? So it's like there's I was listening, like reading about like the difference between methodical listening and random, like hearing, and the importance of like making a plan whilst hearing. And I find that even when hearing, if I take the time to contemplate whilst it's happening, like whilst Prabhupada's saying something, I assimilate it more, not in a memorized form, but a more assimilated form where it becomes more practical. I'm thinking about it. I ask questions to other people whilst I'm even mopping the floor. Sometimes it can just, because I'm fallen, so my mind just wanders, unfortunately. And but when I sit down and I'm either taking notes or I'm making a plan for this session to take an hour, listen to this Prabhupada lecture, and try my best to assimilate what he's saying, I find that I get quote unquote more benefit from that. You say, means not that which one's more important, how I can better hear whilst I'm doing service.
That's a good point. Everyone heard that question. So there's another aspect of that, is that while it takes practice. The whole idea of continuity is that you may get more benefit now in this stage where you're learning how to multitask, because but the ability to hear, even in just like we chant japa, sometimes someone says, oh, this person's chanting japa too loud, I can't concentrate. It's because you're not hearing your japa. You just have to learn how to fine-tune your ear, fine-tune your hearing, and fine-tune your mind. Everything has to be synchronized. So I can now, I mean, in the beginning, maybe it's the case, but we had, and maybe it's because I had the opportunity to make the connection where when we were washing pots, in those days we didn't have expensive headphones or earbuds or anything like that. They didn't exist unless it was on a cord. You can't have it on a cord connected to an amplifier while you're washing pots. We just turned up the volume, and because this one thing is Namachintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. That's the context, is that the holy name and the related instructions are absolute. So if you're hearing them, there's a benefit. You may not actually appreciate everything that's going on, what Prabhupada is saying, but the fact is it's having an impact on you. It's having an effect. So your subtle mind is hearing it, just like what do they call marketing and advertising? How many people can still remember a jingle from their childhood that was played on the television set, 60 years ago or 50 years ago? In my case, 65, 70 years ago. And somehow or other, you're still hearing it. How much concentration, effort did you put into hearing it? None. But it was there, and your mind captured it. So whether you know it or not, your mind is capturing everything. Every single sound. Your mind is an unlimited storage device. Right now we pride ourselves in having a 4 terabyte solid state device. This is nothing. Your mind is the repository for everything you have ever seen and heard. It's in there. It's not available to you. Some people have that ability to have what they call Shrutidar. They have photographic memory and perfect recollection. They can actually remember everything they've ever heard and everything they've ever seen. Can you imagine the size of the storage if you're 20 years old, how many things you've seen and heard up to that point? And not just in this lifetime. Actually, your mind is a repository for all your lifetimes, but there's a block there that doesn't allow it to come through, except in certain cases where we have evidence of people who remember their past birth, like coming back. Somehow or other, that delineation that was breached, and these memories crossed over into your present existence. So don't think that, well, because I'm not hearing, therefore I shouldn't hear it. No, you should. Eventually, you'll be able to hear it, and the mopping will become automatic, and the hearing will become primary. So it's just a matter of how you develop that routine. But yes, if you want to, sitting down and studying something is very essential. But the act of hearing and the act of performing service is the real catalyst that creates the jnana vijnana sahitam, that converts knowledge into realization, knowledge into wisdom. It doesn't happen by just sitting and studying. It happens by application. And anyone can tell you that. And whatever you read, if you don't apply it, what do they say? Use it or lose it. Use it or lose it. So we're getting these opportunities like that. And just keep trying. Do everything you're doing. This is just a bonus that it's going in your mind. And all of a sudden, sometime you'll realize, actually, I remember that what Prabhupada said. And this is what we all want to do. We all want to remember what Srila Prabhupada said. And so the more you put in, the more benefit you receive. It is a quantitative situation. The more you hear, the more you benefit. Right? And if I told you that for every second you were listening to Prabhupada, you would be making 1,000,000 lifetimes of advancement, everyone would think, oh, okay. Why should I waste even a second? How do they mine Bitcoin? They build these huge server farms and they have these things, and what is it doing? It's just mining Bitcoin. Fractions. But because to the extent that they have these huge arrays, and they gather these little pieces, now the Bitcoin is worth like $78,000, that little piece is worth something. So listening to Prabhupada is just like mining Bitcoin. You're getting invaluable knowledge. It's priceless. Priceless, because it will help you to, at the moment you need it, Krishna will be there. Prabhupada will be there. Closest thing to your ear. This is something that's a phenomenon that people know. That the closest thing to your ear, the closest thing to your mind, that is your guiding force, so to speak. So if you're always meditating on Krishna, meditating on the spiritual master, meditating on their instructions, then that will be your what allows you to function in the complicated material world that we find ourselves in. Protect us, preserve us. It's a very good question. Keep listening. You have your headphones, right? Yeah, come a little closer for the benefit of even if you're there, they'll hear it.
Last year I was at a lecture Bhaktivedanta Swami, and he was talking just about the subject on hearing from the spiritual master. And he was saying that sometimes like spiritual master is going to be talking Hindi or Russian or whatever, and not going to understand the word, but it's still good to hear because it's the purity of the vibration that enters your heart and that purifies your heart, rather even than the logic of the argument or whatever, because logic, that's all on the mind platform. But that knowledge, the vibration, what really matters is you listening clearly and it's entering into your heart.
The submissive oral reception. Now, Arjuna and Krishna, they're conversing in Sanskrit. But it says right there that Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashna Sevaya. It says that just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire submissively, and render service. All right? Just like that Brahmin in Chaitanya Leela, who was holding the Gita upside down. He couldn't even read it. He didn't understand it. Not a word. But he had formed a picture in his mind of Krishna driving the chariot of Arjuna. And that appreciation of this intimate relationship, what caused him to achieve a high state of emotional connection, which is the ultimate goal, is to establish that. We can't artificially try to shed false tears, and pretend like the Sahajas that I'm so advanced that simply by the mentioning of Krishna's name, I swoon, I faint in ecstasy, I might tear, right? Ashishya Padratam, we understand. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. This is the reality of someone who is on that platform. Right? And the Sahajas, they try to imitate this. But an honest person will never try to imitate this. He knows that this is the highest platform of pure love of God. Right? But it is there. We appreciate it. It's like we can appreciate the value of anything, whether I have it or not. I can appreciate the value of a diamond. I may not possess it, but that doesn't diminish the value of the diamond. So we appreciate this highest level of love of God, pure love of God. And whether I achieve it in this lifetime or another lifetime, and for me, it's inconsequential. Whether Krishna embraces us or kicks us. I understand I'm situated on the proper platform of, just like I have my ticket. I have my ticket back to Godhead. That is undeniable. Anyone who has joined this movement, who has accepted initiation, he has this ticket. And he may get off the train at a certain point, for whatever reason. All right? But a little loss, there's no loss or diminution. A little advancement on this path saves one from the greatest fear. You can always get back on the back to Godhead train. Yeah? You can always get back on it. Because he has his ticket. He started the path. But don't artificially step off the train. Like I said, these things do happen. We see it all the time in the course of so many years. So many people have come, so many people have left. Prabhupada said, famous saying, what is that? Don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. So we have to have everything and analyze things in their proper context, in their proper perspective. So we're here now. Why should I think, oh, I'm a young man, I can go out and I'll come back when I'm older. I have to enjoy, I have to make money, I have to do this. No, I'll come back when I'll do my college, I'll do my undergrad, my grad, my PhD, and then I'll come. Yeah, maybe. You never know. That's the point. You never know. It's okay. If you have a good mentor like Arjuna Nanda, yes, it's possible. He can make sure that you remain fixed. You don't get distracted by the glaring effulgence of Maya. Yeah? But otherwise, it's not easy. One has to have a mentor, has to have a friend, has to have the guru. These things are essential. They're not optional, they're essential. So, any other quick questions? Because it's getting late. Breakfast is getting cold. We have lots of service to do, like those pieces that have to go back in Krishna Hall. All right? Grantaraj Shrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Shivada Govinda Dev ki. What you're supposed to say is Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. See, then everyone's included. The demigods, the devotees, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma.